Deputy Prime Minister Tariq Aziz. He says that Iraq has been trying to turn Yasin over to the United States. But he claims the government in Washington doesn't want the $25 million fugitive.
Twice we asked them to come and take him. They refused, which means that they are not sincere in what they are saying. They are not honest in what they are saying, you see.
The initial offer to turn Yasin over, he says, occurred during the Clinton administration in 1994, a year after that first attack on the World Trade Center.
We informed the American government that we have important information about that event. If you are interested, send a team to Baghdad to get that information.
They actually sent an emissary to the State Department to make the offer.
They did not reply. They did not reply at all, and they did not...
But your information was very vague, wasn't it?
Yeah, but we showed our goodwill.
But would you really expect them to respond to that?
Well, first of all, I have to tell you that we feared that sending Yasin back to Iraq after arresting him and interrogating him was a sting operation.
You thought that the Americans were trying to sting you by sending him back?
Yes.
But for what purpose?
To tell people later on that, look, this man who participated in that event now is in Iraq, etc., and use it, as they are doing now, using many false pretexts, you see, to hurt Iraq in their own way.
To suggest that Iraq was involved in the bombing?
Yes, yes.
So you were very suspicious that he was some kind of plant or...
We have the right to be suspicious of the American intentions.
He says their suspicions were borne out after September 11th, when Yasin was put on the most wanted list.
Yasin's ethnicity, being of Iraqi descent, has been exploited by neocon propagandists like Judith Miller cohort Lori Milroy to claim in her 2000 book, Study of Revenge, that there was an Iraqi-Saddam connection in 1993 and also to Osama bin Laden, just before 9/11 incidentally, based off the proximity of Ramzi Yousef's alleged birthplace and the fact that he first entered the U.S. with a fake Iraqi passport. Milroy has been so at this that her first book, also co-written by Judith Miller, Saddam Hussein and the Crisis in the Gulf, was the first prominent publication that instigated Desert Storm, which was released in October of 1990. But continuing just a little bit more with the 60 Minutes piece,
Aziz says Iraq made the offer as a way of proving that it wasn't involved in the 93 bombing and, by extension, 9/11. They're trying to prevent a U.S. attack and preserve the gains the country has made over the last 5 years. All the while in Washington, the debate over getting rid of Saddam Hussein is heating up. We asked the Bush administration to comment on the Iraqi offer to turn Yasin over. The White House told us to call the State Department, which told us to call the White House. Neither building would comment. So we turned to Kenneth Pollack, who handled Iraq issues at both the CIA and the National Security Council during the Clinton administration. He's now with the Council on Foreign Relations. Do you think that Iraq was involved in the 93 bombing?
I've seen the CIA and FBI reports, and there is nothing in them to suggest that the Iraqis were themselves involved in the 93 World Trade Center attack.
One of the things that the Saddam Hussein government has been trying to do for a long time is open a back channel to the United States, to open some kind of a dialogue. Would there be anything wrong with doing that if it started over Yasin?
I think that opening any kind of a secret back channel with the Iraqi government would be a terrible mistake. They would let the whole world know that the United States had been meeting with the Iraqis in secret, and that would feed all of these fears throughout the Middle East that the United States was always looking to cut a deal with Saddam Hussein, that we really wanted to leave him in power and wanted to get out of the Gulf, and that would leave all of our allies in the region high and dry.
We know, for example, in connection with the original World Trade Center bombing in '93, that one of the bombers was Iraqi, returned to Iraq after the attack of '93, and we've learned subsequent to that, since we got into Baghdad and got into the intelligence files, that this individual probably also received financing from the Iraqi government as well as safe haven. Now, is there a connection between the Iraqi government and the original World Trade Center bombing in '93? We know, as I say, that one of the perpetrators of that act did in fact receive support from the Iraqi government after the fact.
Whether Osama bin Laden was actually killed in 2011 or had already died long before, the fact of the matter is that the FBI was never able to prove he had anything to do with the attacks of September 11th, and was only wanted for the East Africa embassies and USS Cole bombings. So just from the start, we already have problems putting Osama bin Laden's face behind 9/11 and or KSM as a mastermind due to the coerced confessions which led Mohammed to plead to his participation in well over 50 international crimes. In either case, it would seem that whomever had been arranging these attacks structurally as an Arab or fundamentalist organization seemed to have mutual interest with Israel by carrying out terrorist attacks that are all too convenient to set up a pretext to strike Iraq and remove Saddam Hussein from power. And with a balance of what we actually do know as well as the unanswered questions regarding 9/11, most of the Truth Movement comprehend it's easy to see areas of Israeli intelligence which lie behind false pretexts that misled to the disastrous war on terror in Iraq, where it's also easy to implicate the Mossad in some great part behind the attacks, or at least at the bare minimum, oiling the wheels of the Al-Qaeda Trojan horse. But when going back to 1993 and looking at the apartment building with a trail and a convenient portion of conspirators already set, with Yasin and Iraqi, Mossad spy Josie Hadas as a neighbor above, having already temporarily roomed with Mohammed Salameh, who's used it as an address, along with Ramzi Youssef also briefly staying there, this is all just predictable revelation, and you can see why just with Yasin alone, who was hidden from the official narrative for a great period of time, that federal investigators would have been persistent in diminishing any of the press's questions over the addressed and not just on the inquiry over Josie Hadas and her role. And with this revelation also comes with a broader understanding, not just because of the unanswered questions regarding Youssef and his family background, but that he told others that he was Iraqi and first entered the country on a fake Iraqi passport. All of it rather quite telling. But when you come to also realize that if Mossad asset Ahmed Ajaj had also been successful entering the country at JFK Airport, he would have likely been staying at this same apartment. With these revelations hardly known to the general public, you have to ask yourself, are we really to believe the FBI just hired Imad Salem to infiltrate the cell originally in 1991, just over the shooting of a racist nationalist rabbi and some unknown Egyptian imam, who only appears in July of 1990? Or were the feds already keeping an eye on the cell? Obviously the feds were already surveying them before all of this, going as far back as 1989 with photos taken of El Said Nosair and company at Galveston shooting range. But for what in 1989 exactly, as no Islamic or Arab terrorist attacks had occurred on U.S. soil? Remember the ABC Nightline Investigate World Trade Center Ground Zero with Ted Koppel from April 1st, 1993?
But by looking into their own existing files, the FBI has already discovered that it has dealt with some of these suspects before, more than 2 years ago. As you have looked now and gone through the records of some of the men that have been arrested over the past few weeks, you have discovered that you'd met some of these guys before, right?
Some of the individuals have come to our attention in the past. Yes, they have.
Not all, but several of the suspects now being held in the World Trade Center bombing had been identified as potential terrorists more than 2 years ago. Indeed, they were brought in by the FBI for questioning.
During the Gulf War, we took very seriously the threat to the United States from terrorist elements. In fact, we tripled our commitment, agent commitment to terrorist matters during the Gulf War and thereafter. Some of the individuals involved in this case came to our attention, as you can imagine.
And it was in that context that you saw some of these men before.
That's right.
Among the charges that had been leveled but never substantiated against several of the men who are now charged in the World Trade Center bombing is that they had been overheard threatening to blow up a number of New York monuments. But back then, 2 years ago, the FBI was unable to muster enough hard information to warrant a full-scale investigation.